Welcome to AL Debugging for Beginners. Hey, I'm Eric, and I've received a lot of questions on, hey, that thing you did with the debugger, and I never knew you could do that and stuff like that. So I thought I want to do one video on basic debugging with AL. Perhaps try to bust some of the myths and kind of take you through how this works. So let's first find our components, because what's important about debugging is actually there are three distinct components that has to work together. So I have here a Business Central, and I have found the, well, not the new stuff. I have found the source code for the point of sales app that we did a while back on the channel. I have even found the trusty old barcode reader, and let's just run this app, and I'll hit F5 in here. So I start in debugging. And what does debugging mean? Well, let me be now. I'm just gonna copy this one really quick. So there were a URL briefly, and then it changed. So let's actually go in here and just show you what it was, because this is key. So you can see that let me actually go back and find my, here in VS Code, my launch. So I'm connecting to a server called BC18, because that's a Docker image, and I'm connecting to a server instance. So if I were here, I could do BC18/BC, and I'm connected to that one. But that's not what Visual Studio Code did. So the window that was opened by Visual Studio Code did not open this one. Well, it did open this one, but it did something more. You can see here that it adds a debugging context. So we have three components when it comes to debugging. So we have the BC server, of course. Then we have Visual Studio Code, and we have the browser. And those three need to be in sync. And the debugging context is the sync. Meaning that if I'm in here and I'm gonna place a, let's find a good place to do this. Scan item. So I'm going to place a breakpoint. So in the column here, you can see the red dot. That means that I have placed a breakpoint. If I go to the debugging tab here, whatever this is, we can see that if I scroll down, we can see that I have one breakpoint set at line 141. So from here, I can also delete it. I can also try to type it myself, but I'm probably gonna do that wrong. So if I add a breakpoint here, it will show up here, but I can delete it again. Okay, so let's go back here and then start the point of sale. Here we are, we're ready. So I will scan an item I have just off camera. I scanned and I got a line on my receipt, which is actually just an invoice, but we won't tell anybody. And I can scan again, and my breakpoint has never hit, because now I happened to do it in the tab where I just browsed into my Docker image. But if I go back to this one, so this was the tab that was started with the debugging context equal a grid. So if I do it here, and now this is what you're actually seeing, is kind of annoying, because that's a bug in, let's see if I may have broken this now, but that's a good thing. Actually, let's go back here and see if I can. There we go. So you see now the icon for Visual Studio Code is blinking, so it wants attention, and our breakpoint has been triggered. So This is because this browser tab was open with the debugging context, and debugging context was tying Visual Studio Code and the browser together in the back end. So I can go crazy over here, and I will never hit the debug. Let me actually. So actually now it just sits because I do have a breakpoint here. So sometimes PC gets weird. But you can see this one will never hit the breakpoint, but as soon as I scan on this one, I get the breakpoint again. Here we go. So and you can if you don't want to set the red dot with clicking, you can also F9. So now that we have a break, we can see that the debug whatever thingy this, well, let's give this one a good name, the debug bar. It probably has a fine name, VS Code name. Anyway, we can see that the play and pause icon changed, meaning that we are in a break. What we can do now is that we can just hit this one or press F5, that's the same thing, and execution will continue. So if I scan again, we get a new break here, and now I can choose to step over. I can choose to step into, or I can choose to step out, or I can restart or stop debugging altogether. So let's talk a bit about, so continue is fairly clear. So what is step over? Well, step over is in case that we're calling something. I'm actually not sure we're calling something. Let's do step into. So that's just 11. So now we're just passing through, and there's nothing to step into when we're in a set range or set find. Validate. So if I do a step into this one, we can see that, okay, now I'm into notification lifecycle handler.dal. So what is this? Well, this is a code unit, and it's a fairly annoying code unit, but there we are. And I can just step into again, and I'm heading out subscribe disable, and I step into and step into more, and now I'm back. Or am I? If I step into again, we can see that now I am actually on sales line, and I can do step into again. So now I'm in test job planning line, and there's a event. There's nothing on that event. So in this case, we have what is known as a call stack. You can see over here. So the call started in scanner. So if I click on this, then the context of where I'm showing my execution. So the execution is here. But if I click on this one, it will change, saying, okay, this is actually where the call stack started. So whatever happened started by the scanned trigger in this case. Now let me make sure that you can see it from my big head here. So in this case, we had a trigger, and that trigger started our stack. And then at some point, this one calls a function called scan item, which we can see that's the next one on the stack. So the way the call stack works is like any other thing that's named as a stack in a computer. Once that you put something on it into the stack, and then you add something on top of it, and something new and new and new, and then at some point you start taking stuff off the stack again. So the call stack is that. So for every call, the compiler and the runtime environment saves all the information that are at this specific place. So if I go into scan item, we can see that right now it tells me that we are invalidate, but if I go up and see, okay, scan item, so there's a sales line, a next number, and a release code unit. That means if I go back on this side, we can see that at this point we have those local variables, but you just mentioned three local variables, and there's clearly 4. Yes, because the parameter to the call is also local to the call. So in this case, this item that has been scanned is also local to the call. And we also have global variables here, but those are also global related to where you are in the call stack. So globals are not globals. Globals are global in the context you are in. I think that's very important. So in this case, I am in my point of sale, but if I go into the sales line and look where we were, there are no globals, but there are other locals. So that might be a bad example for a local thing. So anyway, we are deep into validating on quantity, and maybe that's not really what we're searching for. So maybe the whole idea of step into wasn't that great. So in order for us to save time, maybe we want to step out. So if I hit step out here, I'm going back one step, and if I'm one step or one layer of the stack, so we remove that layer of the stack. But if I do that again, you can see now we're back to our validate here. So maybe then what we really want to do is step over, meaning that now I can click step over, because there may be on modify on the sales line. There's probably code on modify on the sales line. Maybe I don't care about that. So I can do a step over. And now we're calling the release code unit, and maybe I don't care about that, so I can do a step over again. And now we're at the end, so nothing really happens at the end, but I can still do a step over. And we're back all up to the top, so the trigger that started all this, and I can just do step over again and step over here. And now we're getting into get caption class. So now we're kind of out of our code, but we're still in debug mode. So we're still breaking on everything. So now get caption class, because something is from the sales line is calling that. So we can do a step over again and get more captions. We can see that this is on field number 6 and so on. So maybe at some point like this, you're just gonna say, okay, now we're out of my code. So we just do hit F5 and then we're back in business. Okay, so let me force a new breakpoint here. So that's the idea of what's happening up here, and I think you can save a lot of time by making sure that, of course, you set an optimal breakpoint. But sometimes you just want a breakpoint, and then you need to figure out where you want to set the next one. And step into is a time killer unless you have no clue where you need to look. So I usually go step over unless I know I need to go into something. And if I get into something that's irrelevant for what I'm doing, I use step out and then I continue. Okay, so but let's actually step over a couple of bits here. So in this case, we now have some variables. So we can look at those in different ways. We can look at them over here. And that's fine, but this one has a tendency to, whenever we do a step over or step into, this might disappear. So what we can do instead, that we can add a watch, and then we just need to tell what is it that we're watching. Maybe we're watching the item, maybe we're watching item dot number. Maybe we're watching the sales line dot what are we going to do? Document number. How about that? But maybe we want to see, you know, item, the entire record, and then you can unfold and look at here, and sometimes you end up in stuff that it's hard to see in this one. So we have another way, or hard to see in this one. So we have 3 ways of looking at variables. Actually, we have 4 ways. So we have these 2. We also have a mouse over, which is very strange. So in this case, I am mouse overing sales line and nothing happened. If I mouse over the dot, then I get the record that's just in front of it. If I mouse over a field, then the debugger is totally confused. But there's nothing called document number here. So in lots of cases, the mouse over is not really that useful. So what I find myself doing a lot of time is that if I go back and open the console bit here, so we have, you know, we have the output console, we have a debug console, and mostly debug is just telling us what we're deploying. But you can actually type stuff here. And if I type stuff, then I get out of scope. And remember, this was the same thing I got up here. So what happens if I type SL? Then I get the invoice record down here. So I get all the stuff that we saw above. And if we have values that are too long to be shown over here, like over here in the tooltip, then we'll say if we have long string and say ... and then you cannot see the entire value. Down here you will see the entire value. And there's another great thing about this one. So let's just hit a 5. So let's get a new breakpoint here. I'll scan again. There, we got a new breakpoint. So what I'm interested in now is that I really want to know about SL.quantity. So this is 0. Then I do my stuff, and then I do SL quantity again. So, and maybe if I were even, let's do it. I'll hit a 5 here, and then let's just get another breakpoint. That's why I thought it was good to bring the. So we have a breakpoint. So I can now do SL.quantity. If you hit arrow up, you just get the last one. So 0. And I'll do this one, then I'll do fine. Let's see what it is now. So it's 5 now, and I skip over that one, and let's see what it is. So now it's 6. So now I see the history of the variable. So instead of trying to, well, what was it, then outputting to this console, they will just keep outputting. So I find myself doing that a lot here. Okay, so let's hit a 5 again. And you can see as soon as I'm out of scope, then the watch says not available. We can delete all of them, or we can delete a single one. The same thing with breakpoints. You can delete all breakpoints from this one. Right now we cannot do fancy stuff like I would let me get a new break here. I'll just scan once more. So we cannot do something here that's okay. Let's actually say that SL dot quantity should be 10. No, we can just type a name of the variable, or we can dot into it. That's the amount. So changing stuff in the debugger is currently not an option, but it would be very cool if we could at some point. At some point you might run into the debug console. It will tell you when you're deploying that you have breakpoints that it cannot set. And I've seen this typically with Docker images. Sometimes at some point the server just gets confused, and you delete all your breakpoints and stop debugging, delete all your breakpoints, and restart the Docker is typically what is needed. And you saw this timeout after 2000 milliseconds for terminate. I don't know. At some point it showed up, and then I have never gone away. So I think there's, at some point it was 1000 milliseconds, now it's 2000 milliseconds, and we still get it all the time. If somebody from Microsoft is watching, maybe put an explanation in the comments. So what we have done here, and I think this is the scope of the video because we're already at time. So what we have played with here is simple. You know, we publish, and then we publish to debugging, publish and then publish and debug, I think is the right termination. We can also attach, and maybe we'll do that in the advanced debugging video. So we can attach to different contexts and debug those. But I think I'll leave that up for another video. So that's debugging in AL debugging for beginners. And to be honest, even the not beginners, this is like most debugging, most people are debugging with AL. What's sometimes frustrating is that there's errors that you won't, the debugger won't break on them. So if you have something that fails a validation of some sort, if you have something that throws an error, a built-in error, not a direct code initiated error, but a error that is because something happened, then you might not get a break in the code, which is annoying, but that's just the reality we live in. Anyway, let me know in the comments below what you like about debugging, how you use the function, and let me know what kind of, if I were to do a advanced debugging, what should the topics be? I really want to do a video at some point on the snapshot debugging, because I think that's pretty cool, which is a post-mortem type of debugging where you can get a debugging session of an error that happened on production environment in the cloud, and then you can actually go look at that static image of this is how it looked at the time of the error, why was that. But I think that belongs in its own video, so let me know in the comments below if you would like that. Anyway, that's it for tonight. Until next time, have a wonderful day.